Hey, what's up, everybody? Mike with the Glass Less Traveled and the Fox Valley Whiskey Society. And today I wanted to come to you guys and do a sampling of some whiskey that I received in the mail from a good friend of mine and a good friend of the Fox Valley Whiskey Society, Bob Meny, who is about to open a brand new distillery in Oswego, Illinois, called the H.H. Shufeldt and Company, or Shufeldt and Company, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Slated for a spring 2022 opening. A lot of you guys out there have probably already received the invite, and I'm hoping you guys are going to go to the tasting. But I was able to receive some samples in the mail from Bob to give my opinion on them. He also included a little printout of what the labels are going to look like. And while I poured these a little bit ago, I'm just kind of waiting for them to open up. I'm just going to give you guys like a really, really brief kind of generic, generalized overview of the H.H. Shufeldt and Co., as well as Adolf Wollner and Joseph Greenhut. So the H.H. Shufeldt and Company was a distillery that was actually formed back in the latter part of the 19th century, the 1800s, actually in Chicago. And it was a fantastic distillery at the time, really predominantly known for not only its whiskey, but believe it or not, of all things, its gin. In the I believe it was the 1880s, there was a little bit of intimidation that was put on the H.H. Shufeldt and Company distillery by the Whiskey Trust. Any of you guys out there that are bourbon nerds or like to read about history like I do will have heard of the Whiskey Trust. This was basically a group of distilleries, which was actually formed by Joseph Greenhut, who was the president of the Whiskey Trust, as well as Adolf Wollner, who was the vice president of the Whiskey Trust. And along with their distillery, they brought in about 65 to 70 other distilleries. And part of the process there was, if you didn't like being brought into this whiskey trust, to kind of get rid of the competition and fix prices so that there could be no there could be no competition, there could be no price gouging. If you didn't want to join the whiskey trust, one of the things that they would do would be to intimidate you. And that certainly happened to the H.H. Shufeldt and Company distillery in the latter part of the 18th century. A bomb was actually thrown into the distillery and it exploded. The Whiskey Trust went on to kind of dissolve during Prohibition, and I believe it was, if I remember correctly, it kind of reformed into what is now what we would call U.S. Foods. So that's just a very, very, very brief overview. I'm sure I got some of the information wrong in there, but by all means, please go on to Google and type in H.H. Shufeldt and Co. It's actually scrolling down the bottom here right now. You can type that in, and it'll bring up the entire history of the distillery. So Bob Meny is actually going to be reopening, not the original distillery, but kind of a version of it in Oswego, Illinois, later on this spring, probably early summer. So he sent me some samples. We've got a wheat whiskey, we've got a rye whiskey, and we've got a bourbon. Now, of course, anybody who is familiar with opening a new distillery probably understands the process of sourcing. So none of this is actually distilled at the facility in Oswego right now. This is all brought in from offsite. I am aware of what distillery it comes from. I don't know if that's something that that they're willing to share right now, so I will just kind of keep my mouth shut on that. But I want to sample this stuff and kind of just see how it tastes. So I'm going to start with the wheat whiskey, and then I'll move on to the bourbon, and then I will move on to the rye. Wow. A lot of honey. Lots of honey in there. A little bit of butterscotch. Get a lot of like dried berries, dried apples. Dried apple note comes through pretty predominantly. Slightly floral, kind of like walking into like a flower shop or a florist. But it's those dried fruits. Those dried fruits that really come through in the nose. A bit of raisin. Light brown sugar. Those floral notes are definitely coming through quite a bit. It's that dried apple or dried orchard fruit that really, really comes through. Very soft. This comes in at 98 proof, 49% alcohol. Very soft, super drinkable. Super drinkable. Good thing I got more of the sample left. A little bit of bitter, like dark chocolate, coming through on the finish. Not a lot going on down here. It doesn't have that nice Kentucky hug, but flavors. I mean, I can still taste it. A little bit of licorice in there, black licorice, anise, fennel. I like that. Super drinkable. To me, it feels right about that 100-ish proof range. I love the label. I think the labels are absolutely fantastic. So this is the label for the wheat, coming in at 98 proof. Just really, really quality product. Let's see. These are the labels of my 3 whiskeys that are enclosed. Oh, okay. So here we go. The wheat, 95.5. So I'm assuming that is 95 wheat, 5 barley. Rye, 95.5, 95 rye, 5 barley. Bourbon, 75 corn, 21 rye, 4 barley. Put these back. I can still taste that wheat whiskey, by the way. It's still going. Super, super drinkable. Very, very, very impressed by that particular barrel. Really, really enjoyed that one. Let's move on to the bourbon. So this is 75 corn, 21 rye, 4% barley. No age statements on this stuff, by the way. You can definitely tell this is a very traditional bourbon. You can smell the oak. You can smell the char. You can definitely tell this has been charred in wood. Or aged in charred wood, sorry. It's like a banana. Like a banana Laffy Taffy, almost. Oh, it's going to bug me because it's right on the tip of my tongue. Fruit forward. Toasted sugar. Slightly dry. Slightly tannic. That's those wood sugars. The tannins from the wood coming through. I get some of that rye spice coming through. It's a little bit spicier than I had expected. Very drinkable. Again, this one comes in at again 98 proof, 49% ABV. No age statement on this one. This is 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% barley in this bourbon. This is definitely more of a traditional aged bourbon that you would see, almost something out of kind of reminiscent of, oh gosh, it's got that wild turkey kind of peppery bite to it. There's a really great fruity sweetness in there. Not orchard fruit, not berry, but kind of just like a fruit sweetness. I enjoyed that one. I like that. All right, so now let's move on to the rye. Finish on the bourbon. It's not super long. I might say medium short. That sweetness is definitely coming through a lot, but I still get that peppery, like black pepper, white pepper kind of bite in there, that rye spice. So let's move on to the rye. So this is what we would call a Indiana rye, 95% rye, 5% barley. Fennel. Anise, black licorice. Slightly briny. Black pepper. Mm. Mm-hmm. Spicy. Spicy. It's a spicy rye. That fennel note comes through, that black pepper, that slight brininess. This is exactly what I would expect out of an Indiana rye. This is exactly what I would expect out of a Canadian rye. Something similar in a way to like maybe a whistle pig. Herbal. Very, very herbal. Actually, it's funny. Juniper, like juniper berry, piney. It's funny because this rye actually reminds me more of a more in flavor profile to like a gin almost. Very botanically. Juniper, little hints of lavender and orange peel. But it's that fennel note, that anise, star anise, black licorice, whatever you want to call it. It's that note that really, really comes through. This is very much a traditional rye drinker's rye. This is really unlike any of the rye that we have picked through the Fox Valley Whiskey Society. My palate for rye much prefers that bigger, bolder, roasty, toasty kind of flavors. This is very, very much a traditionalist rye. Very herbal. How much of this do I have left? Enough to make an old fashioned, I think. I'm thinking this would be great in an old fashioned. That herbal, spicy note that kind of help counteract the sweetness of the orange and the cherry and the simple syrup in an old fashioned. Wow, just super botanically. This, I was just recently up in North Carolina at Cape Fear Distilling, and we sampled some gin, and I mean, it's just that herbal botanical note that comes through that's very indicative of a 95.5 Indiana or Canadian rye. Super, super traditional. Some more fruit flavors that are coming out now, some sweeter notes on the nose. Very interesting. Really, really interesting. Great rye. Again, very traditional rye. If I had to rate these, I think I would probably rate them in exactly the order that I just drank them. I would say the wheat, the bourbon, and the rye. 1, 2, 3. The wheat was just absolutely fantastic. Very sweet, very soft. That's the flavor profile that I happen to like in my whiskeys. The bourbon, very traditional bourbon. Lots of that toasted oak. Some of it's interesting, but some banana notes came through. Slightly tropical, very sweet, but you definitely got some of the tannins from the oak. Rye was very, very traditional rye. Very, very, very traditional rye, with the notes of the herbal notes, um, briny, fennel, some botanicals in there. Really overall, really great experience. Very, very excited for Bob and the Shufeldt Co. Distillery out there in Oswego, Illinois. Make sure to follow them on social media at Shufeldt Co. It's scrolling down at the bottom here if you need to figure out how to spell it. Check them out on Facebook. Check them out on Instagram. Keep an eye out for when they open. 100% recommend going in there and grabbing a bottle of all three. Very, very well-rounded portfolio right now. Very, very excited. So, Bob, thank you for these samples. Really enjoyed these. I've still got some left, so I'm gonna sip on them probably this weekend. Everybody, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you.